Let's talk about the dangers of building and launching your no-code app in the wrong order. Now, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are wanting to launch their apps quickly, but in order to do so, you have to follow a certain process for the app to be scalable. What we don't want to happen is for you to move really quickly through those first initial stages with your app, miss a bunch of key components, and then get to the other side where you've now launched your app and then have to go back and rebuild most, if not all of it. We've seen people come up against that problem before, and it's not the situation that you want to be in. So today, we're going to talk about the order in which you need to build your app and then launch your app, and really the full development cycle you need to go through in order to successfully be able to scale and grow your app and your app-based business on the other side. So make sure you stick around until the end, because we're going to start at the very beginning with your idea stage and then work our way up to your app's launch. So make sure you stick around to get the full context for that. Now, if you're new around here, my name is Kristen, and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps, where we help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to either start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding. So let's dive right into this. What I'm going to do is share my screen, and we're going to jump over to the whiteboard. So you want to look at your app's lifecycle, really, and your app's development and launch in 3 specific stages. So down here at the very bottom, you can think of this like a ladder. Down here at the very bottom, you have version 1 of your app. Okay, so version 1 of your app is like your minimum viable product. It's that core app that constitutes your core features. It solves a specific core problem for a specific core user or set of users, and you're building it in order to move into your feedback stages. So you can start bringing on your test users or your beta users and start getting feedback. So really here, we're looking at your core product, and it's being built for your core users. Remember, this is a more slimmed down version of your product, just so that you can move quickly into those feedback stages, which is your most immediate goal when you're first building that app. Now, after you've gone through that version 1 stage, you're going to move into that testing stage where you start bringing on your test and your beta users, and you start getting feedback. Now, in this stage, you really start to refine and evolve that version 1. Okay, so you start getting the user feedback, and with that feedback, you make changes to the app. You start implementing more enhancements, for example. You start kind of enhancing the user experience, potentially adding on new feature sets, removing feature sets potentially. Basically, you start evolving the app based specifically on the feedback you get from your users. That means that you are refining the app in a way that gives them exactly what they need and exactly what they want. So in this stage, you are testing and getting feedback. Now, as you refine and evolve that app, as you do your testing and as you implement that feedback, you're going to push yourself into this growth stage. Now, the growth stage is pretty straightforward. This is where you start growing your user base. You start bringing on more users based on the way you have refined a lot of the app. You've probably refined the user onboarding experience by now. You've probably identified more, a larger user base, for example, or more pools of users, and so on. So this is where you start expanding that user base and expanding your revenue, okay? as you grow your user base, you're going to in turn be able to start growing your revenue and really turning this into an app-based business and not just an app in and of itself. Okay, so these are really the three main stages, or the three main stages of your app's lifecycle. Now, when we work with clients through these initial stages, right, we have a private program that we take our clients through for this V1 stage. Now, within each of these stages, you also have a specific process or a specific set of steps you want to go through as well. So basically what we do is we take this big picture plan. Okay, we go from V1 to refining and evolving that V1, and now we grow it. And that's all good and well, but of course there's going to be a lot involved in each of those stages as well. So when we break that down further, let's look specifically at this version 1 stage. Okay, so like I said, we have a private program that we take our own clients through where we go through this V1 stage specifically. And within that stage alone, we have 4 other stages within it. Okay, so the first is the framework stage. Now, the framework stage is where we essentially create the master grand plan for the entire app's lifetime. Okay, so we kind of take what you see on the screen here, we make it specific to each individual app. So you would want to make this specific to your own app, and then we start working our way in. So we'll start to break up the entire full scope app into different strategic development phases. So you can know what to build and when to test and what to test for and how to implement feedback and so on. We'll break each of those stages down into different feature sets, for example. We'll figure out which feature sets are needed within each version. And then we'll break those feature sets down into sub-features and third-tier features. And so you can see it's kind of like taking this really, really big plan and making it a little bit smaller, and then a little bit smaller, and then smaller and smaller and smaller until you have a specific roadmap, a really specific set of steps for you to now start from that idea stage and work your way back out. So when you're in this V1 stage, that's one of the first things that you want to do. You want to make sure that you have a plan, because as you move forward, you don't want to get stuck in that planning phase over and over and over again. And there's a good chance this has already happened to you, because it happens to so many entrepreneurs. They just can't get out of that planning phase. So we basically want to create the master plan and then move forward from there so that you can actually focus on the execution, because that's what's really most important here. That's what's gonna bring you your results. So after you have that in place, you now want to start focusing on the foundation of your app. Now, we talked about, wanting to launch really quickly and the potential dangers of jumping ahead. Well, this is one of those first key areas where we see a lot of problems arise if it's not executed correctly. Now, the foundation of your app is where you start structuring things like your database, for example. And this really is that first key component that is going to help dictate whether or not your app is scalable long term. And this is where a lot of people can get stuck, especially if you're new to this space. You don't have a lot of experience with databases or with working with spreadsheets, for example. So this is one of those areas that you want to make sure is correct from the beginning so that you don't, again, get to the other side of that line where now you're trying to bring on users and then uncover all these structural problems that have you reverting back. Okay, so once you have that foundation in place, now you want to start focusing more on the more complex and customized functionality. This is where we start to move into a lot of those customized feature sets, right? Every single app is unique. And so, you have to focus on what makes each app unique and make sure that those things work correctly and that they work well and that they're also scalable. Right? That's kind of the point here. You're not coming into this space so that you can build an app that's the exact same as someone else's app. You want to build an app that's unique. This is where you really want to focus on that. And once you do and you move forward, you start expanding. Now, you want to start expanding with the third-party services that your app will connect to, for example. You want to start refining some of those functional components, right? Maybe you have them developed, they're in place. Now you want to start making sure that they're ready to bring test users onto. Okay, so you start kind of expanding that functionality, maybe expanding with integrations and moving into that refine and evolve phase where you really can start bringing on those beta and test users. Now, in order to get to that refine and evolve phase, you have to go through these steps. I should say, in order to successfully move into that stage. You can move into that stage regardless, but if you do so without going through these steps, you're going to create a lot of different layers of difficulty for yourself. You're going to have dysfunctional features. You're going to have features that aren't scalable. What we often see happening is when people skip those steps in that V1 phase and they move into this next one where they start bringing on their beta users, things start breaking in the app or their performance is really poor. Users have a bad experience. They just can't figure out, the app founder, they can't figure out what's going wrong. And they start blaming the platform that they're using, for example, or maybe one of the third-party services that they're using, for example, because they can't identify the issue. So, it makes sense to kind of look in every single little possible place that you could, but the real problem is that they're just not refining and evolving on a strong foundation. They're refining and evolving on a poorly built foundation. And that is not scalable. That's not something you can grow. So you have to go through those initial stages in order to successfully refine and evolve the app. Now, we've worked with a lot of clients through this next stage as well, and we're actually in the process of putting together a higher level program for these clients to go from that V1 into this next stage. So just like the first one, look at my other color. Just like the first one, this stage also can be broken down into some smaller stages. Okay, so when you get to that refine and evolve stage where you are now bringing on your test users, they're testing for functionality, and now you're bringing on your beta users, they're testing for adoption, they're helping you kind of streamline the app a little bit more. They're helping you make sure that it's solving the problem that it's been created to solve well. This is when you first start to enhance the app. Now, enhancing the app can mean a lot of different things. One of the things it involves is making the user experience better. Focusing a little bit more on the design components, for example. When you're in that B1 stage, you're really building a functional product. You're focusing on function over form. And then when you move into this next stage where you start bringing those users on and they're more consistently using your app on a more long-term basis, well, you want to start enhancing their experience. As you enhance their experience, that problem that your app is solving now starts to get solved better, in a more convenient way, maybe in a more enjoyable way, maybe in a faster way, whatever is valuable for your user. This is where you start to enhance that and really build on those things. And then you can really start streamlining your onboarding. Okay, so as you bring on those beta users, as you start doing your testing, you're going to want to grow that to become larger and larger and bring in more and more users. So you need to enhance and streamline that onboarding process. Make sure that when your users come on board, number one, they can come on board successfully, but number two, that they want to stay on board once they're there. First impressions are really, really important. And so now that you're bringing on those beta users, you wanna make sure that you're giving that good first impression, okay? And then number three, we start to accelerate. Okay, so you have this V1, right? You have your test users on board, you have your beta users on board, you are getting the feedback, you're enhancing the app, you're streamlining your onboarding. Now you need to really push yourself into that growth phase. Accelerating can mean different things for different people. For some of you, when you move into that growth stage, you might no longer want to be the only person building your app. Or if you have a partner or a small team, you may want to expand that so that you can shift your focus to some of the business components, for example, maybe the marketing, maybe the sales, whatever it may be. Well, accelerate for you might mean understanding how to build your team appropriately so that your app can continue to scale. Okay, it doesn't have to mean that, but it does mean that for some people. It can mean, making sure that you have the right metrics in place, that you've identified your KPIs, your key performance indicators, that you know how to appropriately track the growth of your app, because you can be working day and night towards that growth and towards that scale. But if you don't have any indicators telling you whether or not you're successfully on your way there or you've successfully reached your goals, well, you're just going to be running in circles, but not going anywhere. So you need to make sure that you have those KPIs and those metrics, for example. So essentially, you're kind of reaching that, if you look at this like a ladder, you're reaching that rung where you can pull yourself up into that growth phase. So you can look at this kind of last little tier in the refine and evolve stage as a thing that just pushes you over into that next or above that next rung. Okay, now, just like the previous though, you cannot get to this growth stage unless you appropriately go through the previous stages, all right? You can't successfully go from the V1 to the refine and evolve stage unless you go through, right, these steps over here. And you can't go from that refine and evolve to the growth stage unless you successfully go through these steps or components here. So again, you want to think of this like a ladder. You can think of it, really you can think of it like you're building a house. That's a really easy analogy or comparison to make. If you're building a house, the first thing you have to do is lay that solid foundation. And then you start building the framework on top of that. And then you start finishing out the inside. And then once you do that, you start, decorating or bringing in furniture. Okay. And so finally you can live in the house. Well, once you're living in the house, the journey is not over. From there, you're going to maybe repaint the kitchen or redo the bathroom or, change the decor. Maybe you want to go big and add a pool, whatever it may be. You're constantly going to be growing and evolving. And you can look at your app in the exact same way. Now, we found that when entrepreneurs want to, move, they want so badly to move so quickly that they skip these initial stages and try to go, right up to here. They face a lot of technical issues. So because their app hasn't been built to properly scale or grow, it's just one technical issue after another and another and another. There are constant fires to put out. because you haven't properly done that testing and gotten that feedback. There are problems with growing the user base and growing the revenue because the app hasn't been built based on feedback. And so now it's turned into a product that some users might just not even want. So you really, by going through these stages properly, you can avoid a ton of headache and just a lot of extra work and honestly a lot of disappointment. We've seen people skip these stages and, like I said, try to push straight for that growth, experience all these problems, and then end up thinking that it was their app idea that wasn't good, or something. They blame it on something else that wasn't actually the cause. And that's really sad because they could see a lot of success with their app if only they had gone through those initial stages. So I hope you find this helpful in building your own app, in moving forward, in launching, in scaling, and in growing your app-based business. And now, if you want to see how our clients start the very first steps of this process and really start to create that kind of master plan and roadmap for their apps, you can head to coachingnocodeapps.com/workshop and sign up for a free training where we will walk you through it step by step. All right, again, I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.